Hello, my many friends, and welcome to Unit 4 Conducting a Formal Hazard Assessment. This is the big, scary one, the really long, arduous, big, meaty chunker of a unit. I'll hold your hand if you hold my hand. We'll both be each other's accountability buddies. Oh boy, let's get on with it. Funny man won't be funny today, or at least not as funny as Funny Man usually is. All right, here we go, hot and fast. Step one, create a job. Step two, task inventory. They just made it all coalesce in one bubble just to save space, I guess. Step three, identify the hazard. Step four, evaluate and prioritize the hazards. Step five, identify. Step six, implement control hazards. Oh, like coalesce again. Step seven, communicate. Step eight, evaluate effectiveness. And step nine, review. And we're going to go through every single one of them in great detail. And step one, create a job inventory. So, ensure the following are current: a list of all employee occupations, jobs, description for each occupation and job. If they are unavailable, they must be created. Sometimes your company may have a format for the job descriptions already made for check with human resources. Hopefully, we do too. I'm told we do. I would like to get my grubby fingers on it. Uh, the following are usual components of the job description. So, overall position description with general areas and responsibilities, essential functions and job descriptions, required knowledge, skills, and abilities, required education and experience, a description of physical demands, a description of work environment. So they're pretty detailed, like in all the details that you need for this job inventory task. And step two, identify the various tasks. So job duty sheets. Consider all daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly tasks. Sometimes that's not applicable, like me as a healthcare aide. I don't really have yearly tasks, like maybe get my surge learning and safety 24/7 done. That's really about it. Monthly tasks would be like taking weights, I guess. Yeah, that seems right. And then a walk through a life of each job. So take, let's say, one of the morning cook. Let's see what their job entails and what they do in various steps. That's essentially what it is. And this slide here essentially is what I just went over. You taking a healthcare aid and branching out all the tasks that they do within the day, a cook what they do within the day. That's just a graphic of what that would look like. Activity, it's homework time. Woo! Activity 4-1, create a task inventory. So each of you take your job. Uh Create a task inventory. So I'll do my start with myself, healthcare aid. Daily, I would do ADLs for patients. I would dole out food, uh, care, dressing, things like that. Weekly, what would I do weekly? I do showers bi-weekly for residents. Yeah, this one's a little tough for some because most things I do every day. But take your job, let's say you're in recreation or let's say you're in janitorial. What are your tasks for that day? What are your tasks for the week? What are your tasks for the month? What are your tasks for the year? I'm not going to know your answers. This is just going to be like a fun exercise to be like, oh, yeah, I do this. And oh, I do that. Step three, identify the hazards. So, when identifying the hazard, it is important to take a careful look at the nature of the job and determine what could go wrong, taking into consideration all the different categories of potential sources present. So, in order to identify as many hazards as possible, review each task from a different perspective. So, a physical inspection, identify hazards using a checklist while walking around a work site or workplace. Task or job hazard, analyze. Observe workers while they work, breaking down their actions into individual tasks. The hazard involved with each task can be identified. So, process analysis, following the process from start to finish, identify hazards involved at each stage. Incident investigation analysis, review the findings from incident investigations to see what hazards contributed to the accident. Emergency response and practice drills, reviewing well documented emergency responses or practice drills recorded to identify hazards, so fire drills probably. Additionally, ask the following: what could go wrong? What injuries could occur? How could it happen? Are there any other contributing factors? So, taking a look at our slide here, we can write down taking out the garbage. Uh, we have to remember what a hazard is again. So, a hazard is the cause of an outcome. So, muscle strain is the outcome. The use of excessive force is the cause of that. A cut is the outcome. Broken glass is the cause of that. That's that's how you properly identify a hazard. When first learning, I did the same thing too. I'm like, oh, it's a broken leg. No, it's that's the outcome. And here we have step 4: prioritize the hazards. So we have a simple equation we can go by. We have frequency, how often you're exposed to that particular hazard while performing a particular task. So hazard's that keyword, not how many times you repeat that a task, just how many times you're exposed to that hazard. So frequency plus severity, the average injury or illness you would expect from the hazard while performing that task, plus probability, likelihood of injury or illness to occur from the hazard while performing that task. Take those three, you get your total risk. I'm going to get Amber to fill in the blanks. There is a lot of information on this one topic. It's very important too, and she's very good at conveying a message. So I will let her take it away. Amber.
In addition, consider using the following sources of information to help determine the appropriate values. Incident reports. Review work activities that have resulted in numerous incidents or near misses, WCB claim records and first aid records. Severity of these incidents. Consider reviewing work activities that have resulted in a serious injury or have a high potential for serious injury. Talk to workers. Workers may be aware of unreported near misses. Talk to workers, since they are aware of how tasks are performed on the floor, rather than the way tasks are assumed to be accomplished. Variations of the assessment/priority rating scale. An organization may choose to use a 3-point scale, or a 5-point scale, a 7-point scale, or anything in between. The focus is not on using the exact scale that has been provided in this manual but rather to ensure that everyone in the organization is using a uniform and systematic approach to assessing risk and prioritizing hazards. What is the difference between medical aid and minor injury/first aid? Alberta WCB Policy 0105, Part 1 provides the following interpretation of the Workers' Compensation Act 2.0. Medical aid. Section 1 states that medical aid includes medical and other services provided by a person licensed to practice the healing arts in Alberta, and nursing, hospitalization, drugs, dressing, X-ray treatment, special treatment, appliances, apparatuses, transportation, and any other matters and things that the board authorizes or provides. Coverage is also extended when an accident results in the loss, damage, or breakage of an artificial limb, eyeglasses, dentures, etc. Medical aid that is considered first aid, see 3.0 below, does not need to be reported to WCB. 3.0 First aid. First aid is limited to a one-time treatment, with follow-up visit if needed, for observation purposes only, of injuries such as minor cuts, scrapes, scratches, treatment of minor burns, removing splinters, etc., or other minor injuries which do not require medical treatment beyond the date of accident. First aid is the type of treatment performed regardless of who performs the treatment. In most cases, first aid treatment is provided by a first aid practitioner. However, there may be situations when the first aid treatment is provided by a physician or at a medical facility. These possibilities are more likely when The hospital or health facility is the workplace. The employer has on-site healthcare practitioners and health facilities. The employer has specific contracts with healthcare facilities to provide first aid and healthcare to their workers. If the professional skills of a healthcare professional are required, and a first aid practitioner could not have provided the care and evaluation, the treatment is not first aid and should be reported to WCB. Hazard prioritization. A thorough hazard assessment will allow for the prioritization of identified health and safety hazards so that effective controls and monitoring methods can be utilized. To evaluate the risk associated with each hazard, values are assigned for each of the three factors. The three values, severity, probability, frequency, are added together to get a total risk rating. Frequency, F, plus severity, S, plus probability, P, equals total risk. The larger the total risk number, the higher the risk associated with that hazard, therefore, the greater the priority to implement and monitor the effectiveness of controls. Total risk ratings. High, serious risk, requires immediate attention, total of 10, 11, or 12. Medium, moderate risk, requires attention, total of 7, 8, or 9. Low, low risk, requires monitoring, total of 3, 4, 5, or 6. Using this method, hazards that pose the highest risk are those with the value of 10 and above, while those posing the lowest level of risk have values of 6 and lower.
Fantastic. Thanks, Amber. I don't know what I'd do without you. So we have step 5, identify the hazard controls. So hazards can be controlled at the following three places. At the source, that's the most effective. So if you're getting like if a water main breaks, stopping that would be the most effective. Along the path to the worker, between the source of the worker, this does not remove the risk posed by the hazard, only reduces the risk to the worker from the hazard. Or number 3, at the worker. So always the last choice, anticipating the worker will be exposed to the hazard. To determine if it's possible to control the hazard at the source, consider the following. Number 1, elimination. Removing the hazardous job, tool, process, machine, or substance is the best way at protecting workers. Substitution. Doing the same work in a less hazardous way, such as substituting a hazard chemical with a less hazardous chemical. Isolation. If you are unable to eliminate or replace a hazard, it can sometimes be isolated, contained, or otherwise kept away from the workers, like sound reducing enclosures for noisy equipment. Redesign. Sometimes engineering can be used to redesign the layout of the workplace, workstation, work processes, or the job to prevent ergonomic hazards. Or automation. Dangerous process can sometimes be automated or mechanized, using chemical dispenser machines to mix chemicals rather than workers by hand. And step 6, implement hazard controls. So the most effective thing to do is to eliminate a hazard completely. That's if you can do that, do that. Next best bet is engineering. So engineering controls or hard controls deal with the installation or modification of equipment that control hazards along the path of the worker. So it'd be like putting guards onto equipment, exhaust ventilation to remove vapors, gases, adjustable workstations, pressure release valves, or mechanical lifts to reduce ergonomic strain. Next up, we have administrative controls. Admin controls are thought of as soft controls for dealing with hazards. They're not as effective as engineering or eliminating the hazard. Uh, Example for administration controls is training. And lastly, we have personal protective equipment. Uh, this is the least effective way to select the last line of defense against injury and illness. It doesn't eliminate the hazard, it just guards the worker from the hazards. Examples of this would be like our respirator masks or a steel toed boot, oven mitts, aprons, things like that. When it comes to all of this, I like to think of the example of a light. A light falls, What do? You can engineer a solution. You can put reinforced bolts up, keep it on the ceiling. Administrative controls, you can have signs all around being like, hey, a light might fall, be careful. Or you can have PPE control where everyone wears hard hats everywhere just in case the light falls. So one's far more effective than the other. So, what are effective control measures? Effective engineering, administrative, and personal protective equipment controls satisfy the following criteria. They must be as close to the source of the hazard as possible. They must adequately control the hazard without creating new hazards. They must allow employees to do their job without undue discomfort or stress. They must protect every worker at risk of being exposed to the hazard. So, you take an example like taking out the garbage. So it's a physical, demanding, sometimes job. So some of the hazards would be you deal with broken glass, awkward posturing, and excessive force. So to put some of the engineering controls into that, uh, engineering control for excessive force would you would add a cart, so a cart to push it. Administrative would be training or like safe work procedures on like how to properly like bend your knees and maybe wear a weightlifter's belt, things like that. And lastly, one of the most important things to do is implementing new control hazards. So, once new hazard controls are identified, the team must create a hazard control plan for implementing the control. The hazard plan control should include specific actions required to correct the problem, who is responsible for performing the corrective action, when each corrective action is to be completed, and the date for when the corrective action should be reviewed to evaluate its effectiveness. So usually you want to do like a quarterly review just to make sure everything's in place. And it's field trip time. All right, folks, let's go to my drive right here. This is what a hazard control action plan looks like. So you have good hazard control, carts for taking out the garbage. What are the actions? Purchase the carts, assemble the carts, get carts to floor, inform staff on where and when and how to use the carts. You have your resources, capital budget, signage. So signage would be like the administrative controls, I suppose. Responsibility, executive director, maintenance, department managers. Target date, and when it should be reviewed by. So usually let's say on October 14th, you're like, let's give it a few months, see how things work. Uh, so I'm just going to read from here. As new hazard controls are implemented, there should be a system for monitoring the use of hazard controls. Supervisors have the obligation to ensure that workers are using the hazards controls by enforcing their use. Enforcement may be proactive, positive reinforcement. Hey, buddy, good job for not standing on the top rung of the ladder. Coaching or incentives. Bribery is good. Or reactive, discipline. Shame, shame, shame. Step 7, communicate. Really, what do you want to communicate? This one is one of the most important steps, but usually uh, a neglected one. Being myself a proto millennial, if you give me paper and like read this, you've shut me off. I'm done. You email me something or give me like something in my Dropbox or put me in a Discord server and it's like, here's all the information you'll ever need. And I could read it at my convenience. Mwah, perfect. So it's more of a generational thing. I feel older generations will benefit from the paper tactile. I have it in my hand or put it on a corkboard. Us younger folks, me saying younger folks, I'm in my 40s, I'm like middle aged. Uh, we benefit more from here's a link to every piece of information you'll ever need. Read it at your convenience. It's just how we all digest communication at the time. Another great way to communicate things is by word of mouth. Uh, Setting up meetings like our occupational health and safety meetings, maybe just like bullet points when we do the report before shift starts or at the end of shift, just reading a memo, I guess, things like that. Whatever information we can convey to the mass of people and also to each other too, whatever works. And just some really good questions I came across while just perusing the internet. When you communicate these things, ask yourself these following: what do you want to communicate? What is the purpose of the change? What team members need to be told? Do certain team members need to be communicated to before others? How will it be prioritized? Does the message need to change for different team members? What types of communication styles should be used? We went over some of those. How can understanding be measured? And how can success be evaluated? So, evaluated, that one's easy. So, if our hazard of that area becomes nil or reduced, I suppose that's a measure of success. And so, step 8 and 9: evaluate effectiveness and review. So, when evaluating controls, ask: have the controls been solved? Does this protect everyone equally? Have the controls created new hazards? Are there any other measures required? So, it's also too important to recognize that the workplace is an ever changing environment, therefore, hazard assessments are not one time process. This means the formal hazard assessment process for all jobs should be reviewed, repeated, and updated as required by the Occupational Health and Safety Code Part 2. Some reviews of the hazard assessments may be planned or scheduled, while some reviews may be triggered as a result of incident reports or identification of trends. So, planned reviews, regular intervals, operational changes, and new equipment. So, at regular intervals, best practice in the continuing care industry is to update hazard assessments on the annual basis. New legislative requirements for total review of an organization's health and safety program is every 3 years. Operational changes to the way the work is done at an organization, such as new chemical or procedures or processes, or simply if we just get new equipment in. So if we get some new lifts in, or if we get maybe some new dollies, or our chemical mixing stations, things like that. Maybe coffee maker? Uh, yes. Yes, it would. And here we have the unplanned reviews. So, results of incident reports, trend analysis of incidents, results of workplace inspections, hazards are reported. So, results of an incident investigation find new uncontrolled hazards or ineffective hazard controls. If trend analysis of incident statistic indicates problem areas, if regular workplace inspections indicate there are hazards that are not being controlled, if hazards are reported and the controls are not implemented or aren't appropriate. Uh, the note for the formal hazard assessment must be dated with the date of the report originally prepared and the date it was revised. And we'll need to do follow ups as well. Follow up in areas to confirm new controls are effective. We can do this in three ways. First way would be through management. So supervisors can walk around and talk to staff to see if the information was understood in the health assessment that we've done through occupational health and safety. So, with our quarterly inspections, we can discuss with other committee members if we think the hazard controls have been effective or if there's some sort of gap that we can fix. And lastly, with workers. So, workers' responsibility is to abide by the controls put in place. Uh, One of our biggest jobs is to observe and report. Talk with workers too. Like workers know the hazards best, and they can give you just a wealth of information that you never knew. Um, when you're doing inspections too, I found this out when I was doing inspections or assessments, inspections. When you go into a work area and the workers are there, they're very suspicious right away. So be positive, be like, "Hey, everyone's doing like a real good job at this and this and this, but we're just documenting things, making sure that there are no hazards or we need to put controls in place. We're just doing an investigation type thing." Be super positive, try to get them involved, ask questions. Like they're such a big help like with our day-to-day investigations. They may tell you things that you didn't pick up on or nobody else picks up on. Uh Sometimes there are near misses that weren't reported that they know about. Maybe it might have been a hazard for a very long time. It's been that way forever. Why did we report it? Who knows? But yeah, just talk to them, talk to the workers. Fantastic, super job. This is technically the end of Unit 4. Yay. Well, we're going to go on. We got bonuses. Bonus. When I did this class, we never actually looked at hazard assessments or like the proper hazard assessments. So I found some through Google that I'm going to share with you right now. All right, it's field trip time. I found 3 hazard assessments that I liked. So we're going to take a look at them. So here, hazard assessment, it's very, very simple. What the task is, what the hazards are, control plans, safety equipment. You can change this up. You can add to it. There's no number correlations to signify your total risk. It's a good start. And then we have this one, health and safety. So I'm finding that a hazard assessment, a lot of them are called risk assessments. They seem to be the same thing. So this one's color coded. I like this. This is very pretty. Uh, Seems to have most everything that we need. Control measures, actions needed, owner, due date, status. The only thing I would add in that is a review date. But other than that, that's pretty. Then we have this. Ooh, let's make that fit. All right, simple risk form. So this one, it's it's good. It is maybe a little too. Yeah, you know what? It's a good. I like it. Current control measures, actions to implement, remarks, date reviewed. Oh yes, that is important. And I also like the color coded stuff too. So yeah, no, when I did my course for this, we never actually saw a hazard assessment form of any kind. In fact, on the exam I did, there was a written question I had to write out that involved a hazard assessment. I had to go over it and be like, "What are the problems with this?" And I'm like, "I think this is right." I passed it, so I guess I got it right. Speaking of exams, we got one coming up right now. It's worth 100% of your marks, so don't get any of them wrong. I have no way of marking them, so it's more of a fun thing. I'm just gonna toss the questions up on the screen, and then I'll fill in the answers through the magic of editing that I've learned in the last week. So, hope you do well. I'll be back right after this.
Oh, hi. Welcome to the super hard exam. Not really, the best part of these is that you can Google the answers, or just rewatch the video. Define a health hazard. A health hazard is a physical, chemical, biological, psychological, or radiological hazard which may cause acute or chronic health effects in exposed employees. Define a safety hazard. A safety hazard is a substance, process, action or condition which may endanger the immediate safety of employees. What is the purpose of a priority system in hazard assessments? To evaluate the risk associated with each hazard, values are assigned for each of the 3 factors. The 3 values, severity, probability, frequency, are added together to get a total risk rating. Frequency, F, plus severity, S, plus probability, P, equals total risk.
And there we have it. Short and sweet. Just a little questionnaire. Nothing strenuous. Able to pause that video or even just wait for the answer. It's all good. What'd you think? What did we learn on the show tonight, Chris? Well, We learned all about hazard assessments. We went through some hazard assessments, best practices of hazard assessments. I learned editing is very hard and time consuming. Uh, it is almost time for bed. But we did it. It's done. Unit 4 all finished. Next up, we have inspection unit. But you know what? Inspections is actually pretty easy. Inspections, nothing compared to the hazard assessments. Oh, hazard assessments, it's not hard, it's just arduous, but very important. Always remember, very important. And I will see you guys in the next video. Ta-da!